In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Grade 12 revision. How are you, everybody? We are so pleased to introduce the first part of the general revision for grade 12 to revise the main topics of the second term that will help you do well in the final test. Let's start with persuasive techniques. If you want to persuade the other with your point of view, you need some persuasive techniques. For example, alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of first sound of a word. For example, bulldogs bash the bumpers of the weekend. I'll eat apples all afternoon. Another persuasive technique is repetition. Repetition is repeating a word over and over for emphasis. For example, we will not tolerate bullies. We will not tolerate their behavior, and we will not tolerate them in this school. I repeat the word tolerate 3 times to emphasize this word. Anecdote and personal experience. A personal story involving real-life events told by the writer. For example, I know the damage speeding can do because my son was killed in a car crash. Another persuasive technique is rhetorical question. A question which only has one reasonable answer used to reinforce a point. For example, should footballers be treated any differently from ordinary citizens? It's a question and you think. Inclusive language, or we can call it personal pronouns. Use of words such as you, we, us, our to include the reader in the argument. We all must donate and help save the children. It's our responsibility. Exaggeration. It's one of the most important persuasive techniques that's used in the advertisements. Make an issue seem more important than it actually is. For example, the government has telling us millions of lies. The government has told us a few lies. Expert opinion is one of the most effective persuasive techniques. Makes the writer seem more credible when they have an expert supporting their arguments. Dr. Bob warns smoking is bad for your lungs. Of course, it's better than saying, my friend Bob says smoking is bad for your lungs. Another important persuasive technique, statistics. Facts and figures used to make the writer seem more valid and credible. To say, 90% of people who smoke develop lung cancer is better than saying many people who smoke develop lung cancer. Emotive language. Like many persuasive techniques, emotive appeals aim to engage people's feelings, not logic or reason. If a writer can manipulate a reader to feel a certain way, that reader should be more likely to agree with the writer's overall contention. Often writers will use other forms of persuasive language techniques in order to appeal to people's emotion. Expert opinion or quotes. Using an expert or important person's opinion to make your argument seem more convincing. Experts are often called upon to make one side seem stronger and more believable. Here is a quote from Albert Einstein. Groups of 3. It's easy to be used in your essay. When three adjectives or phrases are used to emphasize a point, like saying homework is boring, dull, and uninteresting. Ellipsis. The omission from a sentence or other construction of one or more words that would complete or clarify the construction, as the omission of who are, while I am, or while we are from the sentence I like to interview people sitting down. Concession. First, we want to know what is a concession. Concession is when you recognize the opposing viewpoint, conceding something that has some merit. A reader of your essay is more likely to listen to you if you show you can see you can see his or her point of view before you counter that argument. Why is concession important? It's important because it allows you to show that you see and appreciate good reasoning on the part of the opposition. At the same time, you have the opportunity to show your own better reasoning. The opposition might be right, but you are righter. Remember that a concession is not a form of weakness. In fact, a concession is a strength as it finds common ground with your opponent and establishes your ethical appeal. You are a reasonable person willing to listen, to acknowledge that there are more sides to an issue than yours. We consider all figurative language are persuasive techniques. We can use figurative language to persuade the other with our point of view. Figurative language is the use of descriptive words that bring your reader into the story or into the issue. For example, simile. A simile is a comparison between two unlike things using like or as. For example, her smile was so wide it looked like a piano keyboard. He was as sick as a dog. Metaphor. A metaphor directly compares two unlike things without using like or as. For example, the boy was a golden knight, protecting his little sister from the fire-breathing dragon that lives in the sandbox. Another figurative language is personification. Personification assigns human characteristics and traits to non-human objects. For example, the school gates welcomed us. The stars dance in the sky. Hyperbole. Hyperbole is the use of gross exaggeration to describe something that could never happen in real life. The teacher's voice was so loud that astronauts orbiting Earth could hear the lecture. We mentioned before alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of two or more sounds. Stan, the strong surfer, saved several swimmers on Saturday. Alliteration of the S sound. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is a word that imitates a sound. The cow mows in the pasture.